So if this was an equation, we would be moving things over to one side and factoring it. And that is because of the fact that we have a square, so it's quadratic, so we'll need to use our quadratic methods. Now, when you notice the first thing that you have this inequality means that we are going to solve f is equal to 0, and then we are going to test a point in each of those intervals. So to solve f is equal to 0, I first move everything over, so I get 7x squared minus 6x minus 1 is equal to 0. Now, to solve this equation, I need to factor. So I look at the factors of the first times the last, so two numbers that multiply together to give us -7, 7 times -1, and they need to add together to give us -6. Now, when I look at that, multiplying 7 and 1, I mean, that's your only combination, 7 and 1. To get the -6, you'll have to have a -7 and a +1. Now, we cannot just plop down this number because of the fact that it's 7 rather than 1x squared. So I need to split this up into -7x, +1x, -1, and then the 7x squared is equal to 0. Then I go through my grouping method. From the first two, I can bring out a 7x. That leaves me with x minus 1. From the last two, I need to get an x minus 1. I already have that, so I need to put a placeholder 1 so that I do in fact have a term to bring out when I am left over with this x minus 1. So I have my x minus 1s that are common to both, so I bring those out, and then I have left over 7x and a +1. Now, once it is finally factored, I can then set each of those factors equal to 0. So I set x minus 1 equal to 0, 7x plus 1 equal to 0, solve, I get x is equal to 1, x is equal to -1/7. Now, if this was an equation, we would be done. It would be a done deal. These are the two answers. But because this is an inequality, these two numbers are what we call our boundary points. And those boundary points have to be put on a number line where we will have -1/7 and 1. And then we have to test each of these three separate intervals. So to test the intervals, I'll start off by writing them out. -infinity to -1/7, -1/7 to 1, and then 1 to infinity. Now, when you look at the three intervals, you can pick any number you want to. So I'm going to pick, for example, -3, 0, and let's say 10. Okay? You can also plug into any representation of the polynomial that you want to. So you could plug into the factored form x minus 1, 7x plus 1. Or if you really wanted to do some extra work, you could plug into this formulation. So the 7x squared minus 6x minus 1. Now, I have the hiccups all the time. I will show you a way to kind of do this so that it's a little easier in terms of time efficiency. What you can also do is you can go and type in the equation into the graphing calculator. So 7x squared minus 6x minus 1. And then you need -3, 0, and 10. So if I hit second table, and I look and I cursor up to -3, that will tell me what the y value is, if it's positive or negative. So in this case, my y value is a positive, and that's the same as plugging into the original function. And then I could cursor down to 0, and at x is equal to 0, we have -1, so that tells us it's negative. And then I could cursor down to my other sample point of 10, which tells us that it's a positive 639, so we have a positive. Okay, if you're going to take business calc or calc, though, you really don't want to be relying on the graphing calculator. You want to be able to do this by plugging it into the polynomial that has been given here of either x minus 7 times the 7x plus 1 or the original polynomial. Okay, now the question of what we want. So when we started off this question, we wanted a less than. And we moved everything over to one side so that this polynomial became 7x squared minus 6x minus 1 is less than 0. So even in moving all those terms over, we still want that our f of x function is less than 0. So we take a look at all of our little numbers, and we see that the one interval where we have it negative, less than 0, is the -1/7 to 1. So that tells us the numbers, the negative 1/7 to 1. Then because of the fact that this is strictly less than, that tells us to use parentheses. So we'll put a parenthesis, and all of the numbers in that interval from negative 1/7 to 1, every single number that's in there, that is a solution to our inequality.